Hey everyone, CatmasterOP here, hope you're having a great day so far. Tonight, a couple of hours from me recording this video, the Path of Exile 3.6 expansion will have launched, introducing the Synthesis League. Aside from a very cool looking mechanic that combines gameplay elements of the previous leagues in a fresh way, this update cycle also contains massive changes and additions to game mechanics, skill gems, the passive skill tree and unique items, as most of PoE updates do these days. In this video, I want to give you a very quick overview of things, assuming the viewer you have played Path of Exile before and stopped playing or caring about new information sometime during the previous league, the Betrayal League. For the people who already know which part of the video they are interested in, I shall prepare some timestamps below. We will be covering what expects you in this league, namely the Synthesis League mechanics and the implementation of Betrayal mechanics to the core game, and give you an outline of changes, notable nerfs, and buffs, as well as additions seen in the development manifesto and patch notes. I will then quickly outline the implications for my build, the Frostwind Ascendant, and then I'll pretty much tell you what I recommend you to do in this league and what my personal plans are for the Synthesis League. I will not give you any detailed overview of the new skills or support gems, as there is numerous resources where you can get information about those. I will not give you strategy recommendations regarding the main league mechanics, as we simply don't know enough about them yet. If I'd have to go from previous leagues, I'd say it can be worth engaging with them early on, but most people will be largely skipping them until they are in maps, because getting to maps early is where the money is in a trade league. I won't give any in-depth explanations or explanations of basic game mechanics and settings or third-party tools that you should be using. But I will give you additional content creator resource recommendations for you to draw inspiration from. So let's get into this. In Synthesis League, we will encounter a new NPC called Kavas, who we have to help recover his memory. The league looks very fresh, but reduced to its principles, it's very similar to both Delve and Incursion League, so in order to describe it better, I will draw a lot of comparisons. But elements from both leagues really are combined in a very smart way, with a couple of new twists, and of course we get some completely new encounters and rewards, so I'm super hyped to actually play it. In every area past the mudflats, we will get to enter fragments of Kavas memories, in which we have to progress quickly through monsters and then reach and activate memory stabilizers. While we will be fighting our way through the monsters, Kavas memories start collapsing behind us, so we'll have to move quickly. If we fall behind, we will start taking damage over time and be kicked out of the run after a short duration of remaining in the collapsing regions. Once stabilized, the memory fragments will appear in a sort of inventory where, similar to Incursion temples, we get to build a longer run of probably around 11 fragments in total, in which we can revisit them and benefit from carefully planning ahead. The idea here is that claimed fragments have a set number of runs, after which they decay. As visually indicated, they connect differently, so you have to use them in a smart way to reach the different floating reward memories that will pop up in Kavas' mind as you progress through the game. There will not only be local modifiers, similar to map mods on the fragments, but depending on your combination of fragments and the length of your run, there will also be global modifiers that will affect the entire run, so you can build your very own little dungeon once again and make the big decisions on the risk-reward scenarios that you're going to run. From the memory fragments, we gain access to two new types of base items. There's fractured items, which are rares that have one or more mods locked in place, so when you're crafting them, only the regular mods will change. By the nature of randomly generated loot, most of them will not be great, and when you do craft them, you won't be able to craft them blue. But we will be able, however, to use a new device called the Synthesizer, in which we can sacrifice these fractured items in order to create base types with powerful new implicit modifiers not seen before, that somewhat depend on the fractured items used to create them. Lab enchants will get a separate slot, so they don't compete with these new implicits. June, the NPC from the Betrayal League, has been added to the roster of masters next to Zana, Alva, Nico and Einhar for a total of 5. While we meet Einhar in Act 2, Nico in Act 4 and Alva in Act 7, June is only introduced in Highgate, Act 9. Instead of a 16% chance to spawn one of 4 objectives on our atlas, we now have a 20% chance to spawn one of 5 every time we complete an endgame map. Because we do not find her in every single area as we did in Betrayal League, there has been a change similar to the implementation of the other new masters. When we do encounter June, that area will contain not only 1 but 3 betrayal encounters. We will have a guaranteed research and a guaranteed intervention encounter. The third encounter will be either a transportation or a fortification type. This will make it impossible to completely avoid the Immortal Syndicate by leaving a research type encounter uncompleted, which was a very popular strategy, especially in hardcore during the Betrayal League itself. Fighting the Mastermind will still somewhat reset your board, but after the reset, more members will have initial positions and higher ranks on average now. Now I will quickly go over changes and additions, buffs and nerfs included in the 3.6 expansion. I can't go into much detail here, but I do want to provide a quick overview of what I deem most important. With regards to the implementation of the Betrayal League, the rewards for safe houses have been adjusted. While we get more rewards from the safe houses in general, as we'll see them less frequently, the very sought after scarabs and the upgraded breach stones have been reduced in power significantly. Both will still be very much worth running, just not the insane boost they were during Betrayal League itself. On another positive note, sulfite scarabs will now guarantee 3 nodes of sulfite, so they will feel better to occasional users in terms of consistency. Some veiled item mods are no longer available on the crafting bench. The big theme of the expansion is the rebalance of all spells and changes made in favor of hand casting rather than using traps, mines or trigger effects. There is mostly no changes for attack specific characters and the bottom half of the passive tree, but GGG has already stated that attack skills will receive the same or even more attention in the next expansion 3.7. Handcasting has been made more powerful, mostly by reducing damage, but making the cast times shorter to compensate. Skills that were outperforming others in terms of damage output or ease of use were more or less brought in line with each other. We did not only get new skill gems on top, but some support gems also have been improved and new ones have been added. While some changes and additions stand out to me, and I will go shortly into where I see the winners and the not so much winners here in my recommendation section, we can say that the spellcaster meta has a very fresh feel to it and will take some time to figure out which will be the most powerful choices in 3.6. That's also because there's numerous changes to in-game mechanics and the passive tree. Curse effect reductions on unique boss monsters have been lowered from 60 and 80% less effect to 33 and 66% less effect respectively. This makes all curses stronger against bosses, however enfeeble and temporal chains now innately have lower values against rare and unique enemies, at about 50% of their values against normal and magic enemies. Both enfeeble and temporal chains were incredibly strong layers of defense and should still be very much worth it, but now will contribute much less to trivializing the hardest of boss encounters in the game. Leeching Energy Shield was previously only possible by giving up your life leech with the Ghost Reaver passive keystone. In 3.6 there will be sources of Energy Shield leech, among which a new support gem and passive skills specific to spell users. Life Leech has received a nerf for users that had the Life Leech effects don't end on full life stat. Each individual leech instance now has a limit of 10% of your maximum life, so it can never last longer than 5 seconds. The Ascendant's Slayer passive skill only gets half of this, and is not the only source of this stat outside of Slayer anymore, as there is a new pair of unique gloves added in 3.6 that grant the exact same effect. The passive tree has new passive clusters, not only ones granting energy shield leech for spells, but also weapon-specific caster passives and channeling passives. Outdated areas and clusters have been removed or restructured, most notably in the Templar and Shadow area. Both the Ascendancy classes, Trickster and Inquisitor, have received small changes that make them more powerful. The Trickster gained power and frenzy charge generation while channeling, and a stack mechanic called Ghost Shroud that makes the combination of hit avoidance defenses like evasion and dodge with energy shield more favorable. The Inquisitor gained a lot more consistency on the Sanctify and Pious Path end, so you gain bonuses more reliably and even buff allies' interactions with Consecrated Ground. This synergizes well with another global change to Consecrated Ground that adds an offensive aspect to it by causing hits against enemies in it to have 100% increased critical strike chance. Implications for my build Frostwind Ascendant. Many people know me for my 3.1 build Frostwind Ascendant, which utilizes the White Wind unique dagger and stacks crit and cold damage on Abyss Jewels. I played the build to level 95 in Hardcore 3.1 Abyss League and revisited the build in 3.5 Betrayal as a softcore experiment to see how well the build could tackle the endgame bosses. At level 96 and more geared and optimized than ever before, I ended up being able to defeat the Mastermind and Uber Elder on very reasonable investment, mostly because elemental dagger builds are pretty much outside of the meta at the moment, and Abyss Jewels for it were pretty cheap. While 3.6 does not change a whole lot about attack-based builds, the most significant changes, both the Leech Length nerf and the Tomb Fist nerf, affect the build. The build was always on the verge of hardcore viability, but with its strongest defensive aspect, the Leech, significantly weakened, I don't recommend this build for hardcore at all anymore. It's also not a good league starter without leveling gear unless you really know what you're doing, and even then you're gimping your progression. It is still one of the smoothest feeling Frostblade builds out there, but I will have to evaluate how much of a boss killer potential it still has when Leech instances that previously lasted for a couple of seconds only last for 2.5 seconds now. Degeneration effects in boss fights will be a massive problem if you don't get to deal damage in order to leech back for more than 2 or 3 seconds now. I never beat Uber Elder Deathless on it, and while I still think it was and is possible, it will be a lot harder to do so now. My recommendation for you in terms of what looks strong and what to avoid is, first of all, I want you guys to embrace that this is a spellcaster league. Even if your favorite skill is among the nerfed ones, or you were hoping for big changes to your attack-based plans, be sure to know that this is not the last round of changes, and GGG aims to renew the game and keep it fresh with every expansion. The extensive changes to skills and the passive tree shake up the spellcaster meta, and it shuffled the deck, so now it's our turn, so to say, as a community to solve the puzzle and find the strongest combo and build amazing characters that previously wouldn't have been possible in the same way. And in the end, this is what Path of Exile is all about for many people who enjoy the theory crafting side of things. So my recommendation is to make sure you experience it firsthand and you try something you haven't played before, or experiment with the new options offered. There is only 3 skill changes that stand out to me as nerfs that make the skill one I would disencourage you from using as a starter. First of all, there's Arc. While Arc was really a no-brain pick, especially for mines and traps, it has received a nerf to its damage, and GGG halved the chaining range on it. So While it will still be as good as ever on a totem build in terms of killing bosses, farming on it, especially with a mine or trap build, will be significantly weaker as compared to the self-casting option and compared to the other spells that we could be using. Armageddon Brand, despite being the weaker brand of the two brand skills, received the bigger nerf. So while I think it's still workable, I would not recommend starting with it over Stormbrand or anything else. Summon Raging Spirits has not been a top tier pick for a while, but has seen a significant increase to the base mana cost, which will make the skill a lot harder to sustain for non-blood magic options. Blade Vortex, Stormbrand and Winter Orb have been significantly reduced in damage output, but will still be great options because of their mechanics, which make them very convenient to use. Same with Glacial Cascade really, which is often used on totems and mines. The build took a little bit of a hit because there's 16% less top end damage, but the cast time has been reduced, so on totems and self-casts it will still be very, very good. In general, I think almost every spell is worth starting with and trying to build around. The options that look excellent to me right now are chaos damage over time spells like Essence Drain Contagion and the new Soul Rend skill. Also, the Fork support gem has been reworked and now grants a more damage multiplier at higher levels as opposed to a less damage multiplier, so it's a really viable option now on projectile spells that benefit from it. The big winners here are Ethereal Knives, Fireball and Spark. Ethereal Knives can be augmented with the Ring of Blades Threshold Jewel to fire its projectile in a nova rather than a cone. Fireball does have a secondary AoE explosion which can overlap on a single target in the way that you hit the target in front of a wall, it will explode, fork into two more fireballs which will then explode on the wall so that you end up hitting the target for a total of 3 AoE explosions. Spark also benefits from the change to the Fork support gem, especially because Spark has been buffed so that the same projectile can hit the same monster more frequently. Previously there was a cooldown of 1 second, which has now been reduced to 0.66 seconds. Also, Flame Totem has been reworked, which is now considered channeling. It is a physical skill that has innate 50% physical to fire conversion and creates consecrated ground around it that provides curse immunity. It's very interesting, especially for newer hardcore players that are interested in progressing safely and don't prioritize speed over everything. I myself haven't been able to make a decision of whether to play solo self-found or trade league, probably going to start in hardcore solo self-found because I can convert to hardcore trade that way. I'm strongly considering starting Essence Drain Contagion as an occultist or trickster now, depending on which league I'm going to play. Trickster is a little bit better for a life-based build, but occultist would make for an early transition to CI that is extremely easy. I'm going to plan my build last minute, probably end up winging most of it. I'm not a fan of too theoretical theory crafting, but more a fan of hands-on the game theory crafting. On top of that, Path of Building hasn't received an update yet, so it's also kind of hard right now to give exact plans for leveling. I don't want to pretend I know exactly what you should be doing, but I will steer you into the direction of further content that should help you decide on this matter. If you're interested in the general damage over time, trickster or occultist plans that I shall be following, I would recommend you check out Tarkicat's video, which is great both for Essence Drain Contagion and the new Soul Rend skill. Tarkicat has been playing a lot of damage over time builds in his Path of Exile time. I would consider him one of the experts on this topic. And the nature of his video is great as it gives a broad overview of options available rather than a single path that you should be taking. If you're really indecisive and you want an overview of builds that have been shown to work and are expected to excel as League starters in 3.6, I would recommend you check out the build overview videos by Lifting Nerd Bro and Gazi TV that I will link down below. Both these guys have been playing Path of Exile for a long time and have a very good grasp on what is a good build and what is not a good build, and they're both very well able to present this to you in a short and concise video. No less solid, but a little bit more individual are the builds that Octavian theory crafted and presented in his Synthesis League starter video, which you should also check out if you still don't know what to play. If you don't have a lot of experience with League starts in Path of Exile and you want to make your start as good as possible, also make sure to check out Zizaran's Synthesis starting tips, because it's an excellent video that explains important little things to know in detail. Make sure to let those content creators know you enjoyed their content and that I sent you. Also, if you found this video helpful, subscribe and like and comment down below to give me some feedback and let me know what kind of content you want to see from me in the future. That said, make sure you know where you can pick up the recipes for the crafting bench that are relevant to your build, get an item filter that is updated for 3.6, and make sure you won't have to leave your room this weekend. I wish you all the best success, and if you have any questions or want to have a chat and share your experience, feel free to drop by in my stream on twitch.tv/CatmasterOP. May the blessings of RNG be bestowed upon you.